Get ready to explore the top 10 worst muscle cars ever made, from the disappointing Dodge Charger of 1976 to the sluggish Pontiac Grand Prix of 1980. These cars were supposed to be fast and powerful, but they didn't live up to the excitement they promised. So buckle up, folks, as we tell you about these muscle cars that turned out to be more of a slow crawl than a high-speed chase. Number 10. The Ford Mustang II King Cobra. Starting with an authentic example of a muscle car which came out and failed to meet the hype requirements of its time frame is the 1978 Ford Mustang II King Cobra. Following 1971, the production of American muscle cars was downsized, and Mustangs were also modified down in terms of their interpretation, and the result was reduced Mustangs. The prototype of the model from Ford was by technical means a pony car, but had several different performance mobile features which were part of the muscle car segment. Fuel efficiency was inherited from the second-gen Mustang. Lee Iacocca, who was instrumental in the development of the original Mustang, spearheaded the project for the Mustang II. To some, that was just a 4.9-liter Windsor V8, but on its best day, it could still only produce 142 horsepower. While the console version was also filled with the King Cobra, the car managed to do a 0 to 60 miles per hour in 10.5 seconds. However, these drawbacks could not prevent the modification of its total sales to over 1 million in 1974 and 1978. The car had an out-of-the-world success too. It had toppled the Jaguar XJ6 by Motor Trend for their Car of the Year in 1974. However, it is not always the perspective on muscle cars as one of the worst ever built when having a closer look to the 1978 Ford Mustang II King Cobra. Number 9. Pontiac GTO. Muscle cars are an expression of power and speed. However, not all muscle cars are made in the same way. Some are not as good as the others. The GTO of 1974 is one such vehicle. It was a bitter pill for muscle car fans. The 64 version featured a large 325-inch V8 engine. It could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 7 seconds. However, by 1974, the GTO had already become outdated. The motorization was reduced to a 350 cubic inch V8 with just 200 horsepower. It was no longer the car that had once been the most powerful one. The 74 GTO was almost like a grandma's car than a muscle car, and it was on the same platform as the Chevy Nova, which was a compact car. The fourth generation of the GTO did not succeed. Its production was short-lived, and GTO was withdrawn after just 1 year. Number 8. Dodge Charger. The Dodge Charger is a muscle car that is very well known. However, the 1976 version was a disappointment. The oil crisis did not leave anybody out, and even the Charger got affected. The year of 1975 marked the introduction of the fourth generation Charger. It had a variety of V8 engines as standard features. However, the power level was not comparable with its old version. 1976 was the nadir for the Charger. The top model, having a 6.6-liter engine with a power output of 185 horsepower and 285 pound-feet of torque, was the weakest. The Charger was a huge and bulky car which had a curb weight of 4,250 pounds, but this didn't help its performance much. A 3-speed automatic transmission was teamed with the engine, and that was also on top. This resulted in the car going from 0 to 60 in 11 seconds, which is a pretty slow rate of acceleration. Number 7. Mercury Montego. Up next, the 1972 Mercury Montego. Once a part of the Ford Motors family, Mercury had its share of hits and misses. The Comet and the Marauder were shining stars, but the Montego, that was a different story. The Montego was in production for just 1 year. It was equipped with a 429 cubic inch V8 engine. Now, this engine could produce 208 horsepower and 322 pound-feet of torque, but these numbers don't tell the full story. The Montego was a disappointment in terms of performance and reliability. The Montego GT, a variant of the 1972 Montego, shared its engine with the Gran Torino sports roof of the same year. Despite this, the Montego GT failed to impress. Number 6. Pontiac Firebird. The 1982 Firebird is another of our worst muscle cars, this made by Pontiac. It was a disappointment for car enthusiasts. Many car companies were into name branding engineering at that time. They would take the same car and rename it to create a different impact. The Pontiac Firebird was no exception. It was basically a Chevrolet Camaro with a new badge and a red paint job. Pontiac made only minor changes to the body style of the car, so buyers got the same engine as the Camaro. This practice of rebranding without significant improvements did not sit well with the buyers. They expected more than just a new badge in a different color. The 1982 Pontiac Firebird failed to deliver on those expectations. It was a letdown in a year that had some remarkable muscle cars. Number 5. Mercury Cougar. The Mercury Cougar, with its first generation model introduced in 1967, was a gorgeous car. It was better looking than the Mustang and available in several trim levels with plenty of character, chief among them the muscly Eliminator. If you wanted a variation similar to the Mustang GT, the top-line XR7 would do nicely. In 1968, the XR7 had the 390 cubic inch V8 that produced 325 horsepower like the Mustang GT. But by 1972, the Cougar had become an anemic pipsqueak. It had ditched its sporty styling and turned into a geometric land barge. The Cougar had gotten fatter and slower. XR7 buyers were offered a 4-barrel, 351 cubic inch V8 engine with 266 RPM and 301 pound-feet of torque and 3,600 RPM. That is not great power for a car that's not small. All in all, the Mercury Cougar began life as one of the more promising muscle cars, but before devolving into one of the worst. To be sure, despite its early Chrysler powertrain options, in later years, variants such as the Eliminator expanded on its original V8 to reach up to 429 big cubic inches when it was built on a frame adapted from the full-size Ford bonus brake. Number 4. Mercury Capri RS Turbo. This 1981 model, the Mercury Capri RS Turbo, was a muscle car which did not have much to offer. It was a Mercury counterpart of the Mustang with the same platform and no alternative engine choices. However, the Capri RS Turbo was different. It was powered by a 2.3-liter turbocharged engine thumping from the hood. The car had its good points as well, with body color exterior accents. But the appearance was not the reality. The engine was rated at only 117 horsepower and 135 pound-feet of torque, so it was a sheep in wolf's clothing. But Ford did not dispense with the turbo 2.3 engine either. Later, the Special Vehicle Operations tuned it to the maximum 205 horsepower that the Mustang SVO produced. Number 3. Chevrolet Camaro. Back in 1970, the second-generation Camaro debuted with promise. It had the looks and power to match. But as the years rolled by, the muscle under its hood began to shrink. By 1975, the most potent engine available was a 5.7-liter V8, but it only managed a meager 145 horsepower. Even with the Z28 package, which was supposed to boost performance, the Camaro didn't impress. A slight bump later in the year pushed the power up to 155 horsepower. Yet this was hardly a game changer. Number 2. Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS. The 2000 Monte Carlo SS could have been a legend, but alas, it fell short. It had a V6 engine that churned out 200 horsepower. Now that's just a tiny leap from the base model of 180, and it stood at 225 pound-feet. Not quite the numbers you'd expect from a car wearing that SS badge, right? And then there's the matter of speed. The Monte Carlo SS took a leisurely 8.6 seconds to hit 60 miles per hour from a standstill. In the world of muscle cars, that's almost like taking a stroll in the park. And number 1, Pontiac Grand Prix. At last, let's talk about another failed car from Pontiac. The 1980 Pontiac Grand Prix is often listed among the worst muscle cars ever. It was a time when car lovers saw their beloved model shrink in size and power due to fuel economy concerns. The Grand Prix was no exception. The once mighty 4.9-liter V8 engine was swapped for a smaller 4.3-liter one. This change meant the car could only muster 125 horsepower and took a sluggish 14 seconds to go from 0 to 60 miles per hour. So, which one of these do you think did the worst from their potential? Let us know in the comment section below. And also make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing content like this.